everyone, and welcome to Physiology for Kinesiology and Health. Over the course of the next few months, we are going to be discussing all the functions of the human body. And so we will start at the smallest level, the molecular level, and we're going to understand the chemistry and the chemical reactions that take place within our cells, and then how those cells work together to form tissues, and how those tissues will make up organs which carry out specific functions, and then how all these organs and organ systems work together to carry out our day-to-day lives. A textbook definition for physiology is the study of the functions of an organism and its constituent parts. And us as humans, we have many different cells and many different organs which come together that help us live our day-to-day lives, whether it be the cardiovascular system, which helps circulate oxygen, carbon dioxide, other materials in the blood, or it be the respiratory system, which helps take in oxygen and let out CO2, or renal physiology, which is the study of the kidneys and the urinary system and how we excrete certain things from our bodies. All these organs and cells will work together to carry out our most basic functions. And over the course of the semester, we'll be discussing what role that plays for our health and our fitness. We have many different levels of organization in our bodies. And at the smallest level, we have the chemicals, the different elements that will come together, form reactions to make up different molecules. And now our cells are comprised of many different molecules that carry out different functions. And so those cells will come together to make tissues, and those tissues, all being the same group of specialized cells, will form together to make an organ. That organ will carry out specific tasks, and then different organs will work together as part of an organ system in order to carry out a basic functions. And so we have all of these organ systems made up of tiny little cells that are carrying out functions every single day in order to make sure that we can live. With each level of organization increasing with complexity brings out new emergent properties. For example, neurons by themselves do not have consciousness or thoughts or emotions, but these neurons function together in order for us to develop these thoughts, these emotions, these ideas. And so with each level of complexity in that level of organization brings about new properties. It is also important to realize that many cells in our body will function together, otherwise known as integration. We have many different things that we need to take care of day to day, making sure we're getting enough oxygen, enough nutrients, getting rid of our waste products, pumping blood throughout our system. And so all these organs and organ systems are integrated together in order to carry out our basic physiology. Humans have evolved for millions of years of life on Earth, and the life processes that we have as humans are present throughout many different organisms. We are going to discuss those life processes a little bit more in detail. What are the things that an organism needs to do in order to survive? The first life process we will discuss is metabolism. And so when most people in general talk about metabolism, they typically think about, oh, how many calories is one consuming versus one is burning, which is correct, but our definition for metabolism is going to be the sum of all chemical reactions in the body. See, our cells need energy in order to carry out basic functions. And so what do? We consume energy through food and liquid, and then our body breaks those chemical compounds down through a process called catabolism, which is the breakdown of a more complex chemical composition to a simpler chemical composition. And then, in addition to that, not only do we break food down to get energy, we also put smaller molecules together in order to build things like proteins or DNA. And so that process is called Anabolism, where we take smaller components, smaller chemical components, and add them together to make more complex chemical components. The second life process we'll discuss is responsiveness. And that is the body's ability to respond to internal and external environmental changes. We typically call these changes stimuli. And so we have many different forms of stimuli all around us, whether it be the sounds that are coming out my mouth or the light waves that are hitting my eyes. We have many different things that our body has to constantly respond to. And so not only do we have this complex sense of responsiveness all around us, but our cells are also going to react to the environment inside our bodies as well. And there are specific characteristics and specific traits that these cells have in order to respond to a wide array of stimuli. There are many different things that we have to respond to. For example, if it gets too hot outside and our core temperature starts to rise, the cells of our body are going to find a way to release some of that heat. For example, we can sweat it out. Or if you touch a hot object and that stimulus is painful, our body's going to contract its muscles in order to get ourselves out of danger. So there are many things outside of our bodies, externally, and inside of our bodies that constantly need to be monitored and constantly need to be responded to. Another life process is movement. And so when we talk about movement, we could talk about the movement of the whole organism, or we could talk about movement inside our bodies, whether it be the organs or the cells or the molecules inside our bodies. And so, of course, at the most complex level, we have things like locomotion, which allow us to walk from point A to point B. But there are many other things that need to be transported within our bodies as well, such as food or water or different molecules or oxygen. And so there has to be movement of an organism in order to function and survive. Another life process is growth. And so our bodies increase in size from when we are an infant coming out of the womb until we're adults. And that growth either can come from hypertrophy, which is the increase in size of an already existing cell, or hyperplasia, which is the increase in the number of cells. The next life process is called differentiation. And this is the development of a cell from its unspecialized state to a specialized state. And so, like I said earlier, we have many different organs in the body which carry out different functions. And the cells that make up these organs are going to have specific tasks. So a cell that is in the left ventricle of the heart is going to have many different functions and is going to differ in its structure and its mechanism than compared to, let's say, a cell that of the pancreas. And so this differentiation allows us to carry out specific functions of our bodies. The last of the 6 life processes is reproduction, which is either the formation of new cells for repair, growth, or replacement, or making a new organism. And this has been going on ever since we were single-cell organisms. The whole goal of life is to try to carry on biology to the next generation. And so whether it be a virus that is trying to last and spread, or humans, which start their own families in order to carry out their lineage, all forms of life have some form of reproduction. Next, we'll be talking about one of the most important terms in physiology, and that is homeostasis. And homeostasis is the maintenance of relatively stable conditions in the body's internal environment. And so our bodies have many different receptors that pick up on many different things, whether that be temperature or body fluids, or the amount of oxygen in our bodies, the amount of CO2, our pH levels, our nutrient levels. These are all just a small list of examples that our body needs to constantly monitor. And so our bodies, what they like is relatively stable conditions. That's why most of the time our body temperature is 98.6. That's why most of the time our pH levels are 7.4. Our body likes this comfortable environment in which it can carry out its functions. And when things go wrong, our body has ways of basically overcoming these stimuli and bringing us back to those relatively stable conditions. One example of this is the body's maintenance of our fluids. And so most of our mass, around 55 to 60%, is fluid. And so we have 2 different subtypes. We have intracellular fluid, which is obviously the fluid on the inside of the cells, and then we have extracellular fluid. And so that extracellular fluid could be either the fluid that is in between our cells, also called interstitial fluid, or fluids like plasma, which help make up our blood. So fluids, nutrients, wastes, chemicals are going to be exchanged all throughout our bodies. Our cells are going to take in nutrients and use those nutrients for energy and to build different components like proteins. then other organs of our body, such as the kidneys, are going to filter out the waste products that we don't need. And so there's constant communication in between different areas of the body in order to carry out chemical reactions and in order to maintain homeostasis. This way we can balance all of these different things and maintain a relatively stable condition at rest. One of the ways our body controls its internal environment is through feedback loops. And different variables of the body will be evaluated, adjusted, reevaluated, remonitored when different stimuli occur. And these feedback loops either happen as a negative feedback loop or a positive feedback loop. A negative feedback loop reverses a change in a controlled variable. For example, if we have an increase in blood pressure, which disrupts homeostasis, the body is going to work to bring down blood pressure. And it may do that by slowing down heart rate or slowing down contractility of the heart until blood pressure returns back to normal. And so in this example, we have a stimulus that brings us away from homeostasis, and then our body, through that negative feedback loop, is going to try to reverse or oppose that by bringing us back down to normal levels. This is different than a positive feedback loop, which strengthens or reinforces the stimuli. Now, one of the most prevalent examples of this is during childbirth, where when the baby is coming out and there's a stretching in the walls of the cervix, a hormone is released called oxytocin, which is going to help stretch those walls further. So we are reinforcing or strengthening that stimulus. Now, most of the feedback loops within our body are negative feedback loops, meaning that the stimulus occurs and then we try to reverse that action that is occurring. Now, our bodies can adjust to a lot of different things and are really malleable when it comes to reacting to different stimuli. However, when severe homeostatic imbalance happens, it can often lead to a disease or death. We also have disorders, which are abnormal or abnormalities in function and structure. And so these can be short-term, but a constant disruption to our homeostatic levels can lead to a disease, which is an illness characterized by signs and symptoms. A sign is something objective, something that a clinician can actually observe and measure, such as a fever, while a symptom is something that is subjective, something like a headache. If we relate this back to health and fitness, we have many in this nation that suffer from different diseases, such as obesity and hypertension and diabetes and cardiovascular disease, which are all caused by lifestyle behaviors. And so due to the fact that as a nation that we are moving less, that we are eating more and eating unhealthier and making poor lifestyle choices overall, it's changing our physiology. It's disrupting our homeostasis. We're adding on more fat cells, and then our bodily functions are being disrupted. And so us as health professionals, we should try to promote the healthiest bodies possible by encouraging physical activity and eating well. Physiology is a mature science and has been studied ever since the ancient Greek civilization, and probably for centuries before that. But throughout the years, even thousands of years later, we still have gaps in our understanding. And now more than ever, we need researchers to use the scientific method in order to fill those gaps. There are areas such as genetics that have seen evolving methods and new technologies such as CRISPR, which has deepened our understanding of genetic expression and the way that it impacts our bodies. There are other areas of research such as proteomics, which is the study of the proteome or the proteins in our body and the different functions that they carry out. And all of these experiments are very important to help fill the knowledge that is missing currently within physiology. The scientific method is one of the most tried and true ways for us to get real factual information. And it involves us making an observation, formulating a hypothesis, designing an experiment to test that hypothesis, collecting the data, and then interpreting that data. And this is what researchers use to develop our understanding of the world and the understanding of our bodies and the way they function. We carry out multiple experiments to see how our bodies respond to different stimuli and how those stimuli may impact different types of groups. Many of these experiments get published as research articles in academic journals, and these research articles have to go through a peer review process in which different peers, other researchers within that field, will review the experiment and the results and then give recommendations either to edit, or they can deny the manuscript, or they can, approve it upon certain conditions. And so this is one of our most respected ways of getting out scientific information, because it has to go through the strict process in order to be published. Other information is published in textbooks, just like the textbooks you own. A bunch of this general information will come together to serve as a summary of the current information in the current base of what we know. In addition to that, some of that scientific information is posted online. Now, not to say that different journal articles or different textbooks can't have its own shortcomings, but the internet is a place where scientific information can get a bit muddled depending on where you're getting that information from. And that's why it's always important to check your sources and to check the reliability and the quality of those sources. We have many different approaches when it comes to research. Much of the research involving physiology is mechanistic, which describes the mechanism of how a particular body process works. And so this is different than teleological process, which describes why a particular process happens and doesn't make any mention of the particular mechanisms themselves. Using a collection of different resources, we can develop a concept map, which is the organization of information learned. And so it's going to graphically represent a different process or a flowchart, such as a feedback loop. And so when an event occurs, we can map out how the body will respond. So in this video, we talked about a general overview of physiology and discussed some of the key terms which are important when discussing the field of physiology. But from this point going forward, we are going to get a lot more complex. We're going to be talking about chemical reactions that occur inside our cells. We're going to be talking about the movement of different ions and molecules. We're going to be talking about functional properties of different kinds of cells and organs. So it's going to get a lot more complex from here going forward. And so learning these mechanisms and learning the different functions of the body is going to take time. So I suggest make sure that you review these videos time and time again to make sure that you get the concepts down, and not to only read what's in your textbook and to watch what's on this video, but try to look up other resources to see if you could deepen your understanding. Physiology is a vast and interesting science about how our body works. And you guys, as future health professionals, should really take into consideration the functions of the body. Because what the body does at the cellular level, at the organ level, at the organ systems level, is going to dictate the health and fitness and your recommendations as a health coach, as a fitness coach, as a fitness professional. And so it's very important that you understand the concepts within this class, because it is going to be the basis for the exercise and the activities that you prescribe. Thank you all for watching this Introduction to Physiology video. Please check out the next lecture in which we will be discussing the chemistry within our bodies.